Hi guys, Nigel here from Nigel's Modelling Bench. I guess you guys are probably getting planed out and you want to see some military vehicles back. Well, I've got some good news for you. I'm going to build this, and in a kind of unusual for me, I will do this this build absolutely 100% complete. This one video will be building this kit step by step and finishing it, painting it. I'm not going to weather it, not too much anyway. So finish it, paint it, decal it, gloss coat it for the decals, and then matte coat it, everything, whole lot finished. It won't include a driver, it'll just be the Jeep. The beauty of it, because it's a Willys Jeep, the whole thing basically is olive green except for the tyres, some bits under the engine bay, the seat canvases, and the tool handles on the side there, as you can see. Here, we'll do a bit of wood effect on them. So yeah, the intention here is to build this 100%, start to finish, completely finished in one video. So let's get on with it. Okay, so here's the kit. Open the box, and it's still bagged up from, I did a review of this week. And if you're wondering why I'm doing this, it's because I've got a Ford Gpw, which is a very similar to a Willys Jeep, and it was made in Texas on the 30th of March 1944, and which is 6 days ago. It was last Saturday. Today is Friday the 5th of April. So so yeah, basically this week for me is Jeep week. She's 75 years old, so as an appreciation of how long she's lasted, I'm going to build this kit. And yeah, I wish mine was as nice as this. It's unfortunately not. My Jeep is it's the Ford Gpw Chassis with a 1945 ACM body. It's got a Willys engine, it's got a Willys gearbox and a Hotchkiss transfer box, so it's not really much of a Gpw left, but a lot of them aren't. There are a few, or quite a few original numbers Jeeps around, but this one, mine is basically a bit of a salad. It came from the Philippines, and they tend to just run them into the ground and then weld another bit on, and run them into the ground and weld another bit on, and you know, it was running when I got it, which is a plus. So there we go. There's the kit complete, and we've got our instruction sheet here, as you saw in the review I did last week. So I'm going to get on and build this now, and what I intend to do is sort of do one or two steps, and then I'll come and show you what I've done. Right, so we've done steps 1 and 2, and here you can see I've glued the engine together, glued the engine to the chassis. Here it's telling you to paint these little bumperettes white if you're doing scheme D. I haven't even looked at which scheme I'm doing yet, but I wouldn't paint those now anyway. And then added the axles, added the gearbox cross member, and then gone over the page, and the next step is adding the exhaust, the bash plate, and the 4 leaf springs. Well, I've got the exhaust and the bash plate here off, ready to paint. I'm going to leave this off to paint, because painting the exhaust when it's up in there, like so, is going to be quite difficult. There it is, roughly in place. You can imagine getting up in there and painting all in there would be quite difficult, so I've decided to leave that off and paint that separately and add it on afterwards. I've also added the axles and the leaf springs, and it's a very simple construction. As you can see here, the axles actually go into these holes in the chassis, and then the leaf springs go in afterwards, so you're pretty much guaranteed to have all 4 wheels on the ground. Having said that, I'll probably end up with one in the air now, but there we go. And the other thing I've done is opened up the end of the exhaust, so if you can see that there, just you know, simply open that end up, just center punch, yeah, mark it with a pin, and then drill it, and then using the end of the end of your knife, just scrape that out, and you get that sort of very authentic looking exhaust tip then. The other thing I've done is clean the seams off the axles and everything, and then on the diff covers, just go over with some Tamiya extra thin, just brush it on afterwards, and that just smooths out any, you know, sort of the mould seam in any little delicate areas. The other thing of note on the instructions here, it tells you to paint the engine XF5, Well, that's actually incorrect. The engine is the same as the rest of the chassis, same as the transmission, same as the transfer box. It's all olive drab. It's all the same colour. It's all just matte olive drab. So you could basically paint this matte olive drab, done, and then pick out the detail on here. The actual dynamo would be black. Obviously the belt would be black. I think the bottom pulley is also green, so that's just a couple of bits of detail I've got to pick out there. Obviously the exhaust manifold, which is the bit that runs over the top, that's going to be rusty, and the inlet manifold will be green. So it's sort of basically olive green and then touch up with a bit of rust and a bit of black. This will be rusty exhaust. The exhaust would have rusted within hours of coming off the line, and the bash plate would be olive green. I was thinking about drilling these holes in the bottom, but the kit is what it is. It's fairly simple on detail. It's much nicer than the Itinerary one, but you know, I'm not going to start going to town with detail. If I want to do that, I've got the Bronco Gpw to do, which is a much nicer, well, it's not a much nicer kit, it's a far more complex, more involved, more detailed build. So basically there we go. And I've just noticed something else in case I forget to say it. They're telling you here to paint this radiator shroud black. The whole radiator, or this whole area here, would be green, and the actual radiator itself would be black, but the rest of it would be green. So I'm not quite sure what they're trying to depict there, but anyway, I think I might get on and put some paint on this so it can dry before I start doing the details. So I'll see you back when I've done that. Okay, so there we go, the chassis is painted. I've done the exhaust in a rust colour. Then the belt is like an anthracite colour, and the pulleys and the dynamo and the fan are also, the starter motor there, are just black. So I'll give that a bit of a wash after it's built and everything, and I've also got to do a bit of work to the manifold to make it look a bit more realistic. And you can see here the bash plate and the exhaust are done. This is basically what I've used is the rust colour is a Revell rust. Revell is my latest favourite thing for brush painting. You thin it with water, very thin, brush it on, give it a few minutes to dry, brush another coat on. It is wonderful stuff. I've used Revell on all this as well. So yeah, it's starting to look very nice. The actual colour I've used, this is my latest favourite paint for spraying. This is the AK Real Colours range, and this is olive drab number 9, which is the or number 22, which is the correct colour. If you're doing pre-44, this is the colour for the British stuff, SCC 15. So after, I think it was 42 or 43, we started using the same colour as the Americans, the olive drab number 9, but the SCC 15 is your colour up to then. You can see there's quite a difference when you put them next to each other. So there we go. So I'll continue now with this, and I'll get that exhaust looking a bit better, and we'll go on from there. And there we go, guys, that's the exhaust fitted now, manifold painted. I've added, what I've done to it, I added some if you look at that there, you can see what I've done is dry brushed it with some very light tan colour. Then I've gone over and sort of dabbed a very dry brush of a grey black colour onto the whole thing, the manifold as well. Then I've gone over with a rust coloured pigment, and then I've gone over with a pigment fixer, and that gives you the kind of effect that I'm after, because when you look at rust, it's not all brown, it's got bits of black and lighter colours and everything in it. I've also gone over it with a wash, not quite dry yet, as you can see around those holes there in the bash plate. It's still a bit wet around there, which is it. But basically, I've used a Starship Filth wash. I've just gone all over it with that, and once that dries, that will leave a very subtle. You can see down around the spark plug holes there. Just gives a very, very subtle sort of tarnishing, and gives it a bit of a used look, you know, which is what I'm after. So now we've got to move on to the body. I've got the body here and done some cleanup. There's a load of writing underneath here moulded in, and there's a lot of ejector pin marks. I'm not going to worry about them too much. As I say, the models it's very nice. I mean, it's a lovely little kit, but the thing is, it's like the body mounting, you know, it's a little bit toy-like, a little bit. I mean, not taking away, it's a very, very easy kit to build and fantastic for the beginner. But yeah, when these top hats aren't strictly correct, they should be like a top hat section, not just a raised bulge. So I'm not going to fuss too much about things like that. I mean, if you wanted to, you could plaster it in mud anyway, but and the exhaust is covering that one up. Everything under there is sort of hidden by the axle. You're not going to really see too much of it anyway, and I mean, nobody's going to pick the model up and look at it upside down. If they did, I'd be having words with them anyway. So I'll get on with this now. I've got to add the fuel tank sump and the steering column, and then it's talking about putting the clear parts onto the headlights, which we'll have a look at. They've got to be painted silver inside, so I'll get that done first. Right, there's a sign of Tamiya quality for you. Look how well those lenses fit in there compared to some of the Revell stuff you've seen me do. Sorry, not Revell, the Airfix Umber, for example. And I literally painted those light silver, pop the clear lenses in, and then literally just touch the edge where it meets with some extra thin, and those lenses are in there now, and they look lovely. And when you put it in behind the grille, like so, I think you'll agree they look smashing. They look lovely, really nice. So that's Vallejo Model Air aluminium I've used in there. I've glued the tank sump on. I've glued the steering column in with the steering box on the end of it. Check the fit on the chassis to make sure the steering box doesn't foul. I've gone around the edges of the body and cleaned up. There's a little tiny touch of flash all the way around there, so worth cleaning that off. You don't want to notice it after you've painted it. And just look how this panel fits, guys. Look at that. I mean, there's a seam there anyway. That's a seam on the real thing. It comes around, there's a flange there, the back end comes with a flange there, spot welded together, so you've got a seam there. So don't go filling that or anything or rubbing it down. So what I'm going to do is hold that in place where it's about in the middle, so it's got an equal gap either side. And then what I'm going to do is get my extra thin and just dab some in there and some in there. That'll hold it in place, and then I can make sure it's flush top and bottom. And it does actually need, if you look there, I don't know if you pick that up, you can see it needs pinching on the top. So what I'm going to do, this is why I haven't glued the sides, because if I glued the sides and then clamped it, well, the glue would ooze out. So what I'm going to do, I think it'll work if I put a rubber band on there. Let's get a rubber band. One of these bloody awful things. Oh dear, I've pulled the back off now. I think this will probably work. Yeah, there we go. Let's pull that together on the top. So now we've got no gap at the top. We'll just move that back a bit. Rubber band. These rubber bands you get in a bag from like supermarkets and stuff. They're peanuts. They cost about £1 for about 500 of them. Don't use them for modelling, especially if you're doing like aircraft fuselage and stuff, because or if it's like, you know, particularly springy. I've done some to my hard light, some more flash there that needs to be cleaned up. Left it overnight to dry. Come in the morning, there's the fuselage there sprung apart, and all the rubber bands just laid on the deck where they've all just snapped. So yeah, worth giving these a miss, guys. So I'm just going to put a dab of glue there and a dab of glue there, and I'm not going to touch it then. And this is one of my little tips I probably mention in every video I do, is when you do stuff like this, I just need to nudge up. When you do stuff like this, clamp it in place, then glue it. Otherwise, if you clamp it in place, if you glue it then clamp it in place, you'll get glue oozing out everywhere, and then you'll have a clean up. but you can see what I've got there now is a line there which replicates the seam that's there on the real thing. So just get my glue out of the way. I'm just going to remove that bit of flash from there. A quick little tickle with the sanding stick. And then I can make sure it's all flush. There we go. So that's that panel in. No glue used anywhere, not a single sign of any glue anywhere. So that's how I've done that. So I'll get the rest of this together now and I'll be back. Okay, so got a bit more done on the body now. I've also put some matte varnish on the exhaust because I noticed it was a little bit of a sheen to it after I'd done the pigment fixer. So never had that before. I don't know why that was, but never mind. So yeah, I've matte varnished that now, so that looks a lot better, and that looks a lot more rust-like. I've never seen shiny rust. I masked off the headlights and I've sprayed the radiator now and the grille and everything, and then that'll get masked off then, and then I'll quickly spray the inside of that, and then attach it to the body to spray the other side, and I'll spray the back of the grille first and everything. I'm just going to go around the inside now. You can see I've put the gear levers in, transfer box levers, fuel tanks in. I'm going to do now is make the seats up and paint them, and then hand paint the cushions and everything before I actually glue them in, and then I'll have to sort of roughly mask them up with some blue tack or something before I spray the rest of the outside of the body and stuff. So I'll get some paint now around all these bits. We'll probably do the whole inside actually, the bulkhead, the radiator grille and everything, and then I'll come back. Okay, so this is it for today. I think you can see I've painted underneath the seat area there. So that's all done, painted all around the floor, painted inside the engine bay, all inside the grille. Made sure I went in from all the angles, make sure you get all the painting everywhere. I've also painted the underneath of the tub as well. So that's all done now. It's very strange, this paint. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. When you look at it in different lights, it sort of changes colour. It's funny stuff. Done the grille now. Done the little marker lights, the little blackout lights. They're the actual lenses themselves. I masked out. I made a mask out of a piece of masking tape, and then took them off afterwards, and just went round with a cocktail stick just to clean up the edges and get a really nice transition between the olive drab and the glazing there. And obviously the black is all masked up, and I'll leave that masking on until after it's been put in the body, because I'll probably want to paint over again where the glue seams are. I'll have to wait and see. And I've done the fire extinguisher. That just sits down in there. That sits down in just to the left of the pilot's left. The pilot, the driver's left leg. So that'll go in there, and that's basically Mr. Hobby metallizer brass. And give that a quick polish up with a cotton bud, and it looks quite nice. And seats are assembled now, and all the olive green is painted on them. So I'll leave that now to dry for a little while, and then I'll put the brown colour on. I'll use my Revell paint on them. The reason I use Revell paint, you mix it with water, make it really thin, brush it on, touch it into the corners, and the paint will just capillary around, which makes it really nice. But also, if you do get some paint on, all you need is another brush, quickly by hand, just dip it in some water, rub it on there, and it gets the paint off, and then you can start again. So you know, you get a really nice job. But I'm going to do that, I think, before I put them in, and then I'm going to have to carefully mask the seats up a bit, just go around the bottom where the glue marks might be, and then when we spray the rest of the Jeep, I'll just have to cover it over. But I don't really want to try painting all that once they're in. I think it would be easier to do it with them out, especially this bag underneath the passenger seat there. So yeah, and there's the rear seat. I hadn't noticed, I don't know if I mentioned it in my review, but the detail on these seats, the canvas is lovely. The canvas is really, really nice. I just hope the Bronco one's as nice. So so there we go, guys. So you get an idea of what it's going to look like now. You can plonk the body on like so, and you can see now that the what it's going to look like with the engine and everything. You can't see a hell of a lot of it, but there we go. that exhaust, you see, as you can see, the exhaust is quite visible on the finished model. So yeah, it's worth taking your time and getting it done. It's a lovely kit for beginners, this one. Very straightforward. You know, it's typical Tamiya. It just goes together like a dream. It all just fits, and you can generally say, rule of thumb with Tamiya, if something doesn't fit, you're doing it wrong. So I must remember to paint those hip pads as well on the sides. So let's leave that for now. What is it, Friday the 5th of... Oh, I'd forgotten. It's my Land Rover Defender's 8th birthday today. My Land Rover Defender was made on the 5th of April 2011. So I guess I got some Defender kits here as well. Maybe I should build a Defender to go with this one. We'll see. I have actually got a long wheelbase Defender from Hobby Boss, and I'd love to do a conversion and shorten it, make it into a 90, and that would be cool. So it'd be the same as mine then. So anyway, let's call that a day there, and then I'll come back and finish this tomorrow. But tomorrow for me, a few seconds for you. Hey guys, good morning. It's Saturday, Saturday April the 6th. So it's been a few hours for me, and it's been a few seconds for you. Something I've done off camera, I've gone on and painted these tool handles, the axe and the shovel, and I've painted them with a XF55 buff colour. And I think it's XF55, let me just quickly check. XF57, sorry, XF57 buff. I've airbrushed that on using some Mr. Colour levelling thinner so it gets a good bite in the plastic. And now what I've got here is some oil paint. Now, I believe that these tools would have been all over olive drab because everything was basically painted. But just to add a bit of interest, I'm going to do it like the box art, where they've got the handles not actually painted, and also you've got the steel on the shovel and the axe. So I'm going to do it like that because basically it'll sort of add a bit of colour to an otherwise just olive drab kit. So what I've got here is some brown oil paint, and I think it's burnt umber. And I've put it on some cardboard and I've spread it out. It's only a tiny dab, but I've spread it out and left it for a few minutes to sort of take the oil out of it. So you end up with sort of this thick, sticky goo rather than the paint that's going to flow well. And what I'm going to do now is just literally brush this onto the parts of the model that need to be wood, if you like. And what we've got steel blade on the shovel, and then steel bits on the handle, and then the actual round part of the handle at the top is wood, so we don't need to worry about getting it on the sides there. So I'm just going to paint this on here, and then I'm going to leave it for a few minutes to sort of go off. As you can see, it's very dry. And it's actually a nightmare to paint. It doesn't want to go down at all. And also this clamp's not doing a very good job of holding it, so I'm going to pinch the clamp. There we go. These little clamps are dead handy tools for painting, guys, because if you get the smaller ones, as you can see here, you can put them into the slots around the side of your Tamiya rotating table, which is a handy little tool to have as well. So again, pinching this clamp, in an effort to hold this part without it moving around. And in reality, the tool clamps, I don't think they actually give you the tool clamps in the kit, so in reality they would be there's like a metal bar that this one goes through. And then you've got the front clamp is on the shovel, which goes around the front of the shovel, and then there's a sort of strap and block bit. There's a sort of metal shroud that the end of the shovel tucks up under. Oh, they've moulded it into the body there, so we have got some detail there. So there we go. So that's those done. Of course, what you could do as well, if you wanted to, is do this, and then cover them in hairspray, paint them, sorry, do this, do the steel parts, then cover them in hairspray, paint them on a drab and rub the hairspray off in places to make them look used. But I'm not going to be weathering this Jeep very much, basically because well, I just don't want to. I want it to sort of be a fairly clean. I'm going to put some dirt and dust in the mudguard areas and in the tyres, but I'm not going to go to town with beating it up and rusting everything. Basically because I just don't want to. If I wanted to do that, I think I'd build the utility one and beat that up, because it's a pretty crap kit by the look of it. If you look back at my review I did, you'll see it on there. It's not the best. This is this little kit is lovely, and as I said, I think I've said it about 100 times, it's perfect for the beginner. So there we go. So that's that on there. Right, so while I've been waiting for the oil to dry on the shovel and the axe, I've gone on and painted the canvas on the seats, and I've used my latest favourite brush paint for that. I've got the number 89 beige, the Revell Aqua colour, and I put a tiny spot of number 39 dark green or dunkelgrün in there, and yeah, got that. And what I do is I mix it very, very thin, brush it on. It makes it great for flowing into corners and stuff, and then just, you know, basically put 2 or 3 coats on. And as you can see, the coverage is great. And what I'll do now, once that's dry, I'll give that a sort of wash with something, and sort of just to give it a bit of interest, make it look a bit warmer and less harsh. So getting on with these here. So this oil's been on there now for probably, I don't know, 20 minutes. What I'm going to do now is, with a cotton bud, I'm just going to wipe most of the oil off. And I'm not pushing too hard, as you can see. Get it all off the steel parts, because one of the problems with the oil is it takes a while to dry. Which is as far as I'm concerned, the only downside to it. And also it's very critical on these parts that you remove the mould seams, because otherwise they'll stick out like a sore thumb when you do this this process. So I'm just removing most of the oil, pinching that now to hold it. And what this does, it gives you a kind of streaked, better holding this, I think, it gives you a streaked effect which looks a bit like wood. Okay, so now that's done, I'm going to take a stiff brush, and what I use is basically it's basically a stub. There's nothing left, and then I can just go along it just like that, and what that will do, that will impart a kind of wood grain finish on. I'm not even sure if you're going to see that on the camera. A lot of people accentuate their wood grain like in their World War I aircraft, and I don't like adding too much wood grain. If you look at a sheet of wood, like a sheet of plywood or something, and use your fingers to between, you get the lines in the wood, and use your fingers and say there's sort of, you know, an inch between the lines. That means, well, say there's 35 millimeters between the lines, which is that means in scale there'll be 1 millimeter between the lines. But people do put this this crazy wood pattern on everything, and I don't know, I don't like it. So there we go. So that's got a kind of wood grain on it now. I don't know if the camera's picking that up, but it's there anyway. Okay, I've just realised I forgot to paint these hip pads in the side of the body after I've already washed the paint spatula thing out. So I'm just going to show you how I do this, really. So you can see how thick this Revell paint is. It is very thick. I don't think you'll be able to use it out of the tub like it is. So I'm just going to mix it in some water there, and you can see it's probably, I don't know, I just do it with a brush full, but it's probably about 50-50. So, and then just a dab of the green in there. That's a bit too much now. There we go, that'll do. Not too fussed because it's going to get a wash anyway. So put some more water in there just to thin it down, and you can see that I've basically thinned it to, it's probably the consistency of Vallejo Model Air. So got that on there now. Fingers wet. So what we can do is just brush it on, and you'll see how beautifully this stuff brushes on and how it flows into the edges. And you don't get any of the, like with the Tamiya where you go over it and you get the pickup. You don't get any of that. It just flows into each other. It's wonderful stuff. There we go, that's that one done. And as you can see in the corner there, I've gone too heavy and I've got too much paint. So what I can do now is take another brush, wet it, just brush that out like that, and then take a Q-tip, soak up that paint, and then start again. It really is that friendly to use. So I could just start again now and go over that. There we go. And then come along here. That's better. So you can see that you can mess up with this paint, and as long as you're quick you can correct it pretty much straight away. I'm probably going to have to touch these up anyway because I'm bound to get some overspray on them when I paint the rest of the model. A lot of Jeeps don't actually have these. I think they must have, they're kind of, I think like a piece of metal with a foam on it, and I think they or some padding on it, and I think they fall away. So yeah, a lot of Jeeps you'll see don't actually have them, and the ones that have got them are probably reproduction. Mine certainly doesn't have them, but then mine doesn't have a lot of things. A lot of Jeeps you see these days for sale don't even have seats. I was talking to a dealer only yesterday, and he was telling me that parts are becoming extremely difficult to come by now. Apparently axle casings, there's loads. New old stock, you know, brand new axle casings made in the 40s, loads available. But try and get the internals, no way. And so yeah, thank God my axles are rebuilt. I got a brand new diff in one of them. Brand new diff, stamped 30th of March, I think, 1945. The diff was made exactly a year after the Jeep. So yeah, that was quite a find. So there we go. So that's how easy that Revell paint is to use. And I can leave that. In fact, I don't even need to leave it. I can put another coat on now straight away. There's no messing around, and it won't pick up the, like with Tamiya when it picks up the coat underneath and drags it around. I always refer to pan painting Tamiya paint as it's like dragging a slug around on an oily tile. That's how it feels to me. But for airbrushing, I absolutely love the stuff. And there we go. Okay, so that's all done now. We've got the sides all painted and the seats are painted and everything, and they're all ready to go. So moving along in the instruction, we've done the seats. Now we're going to look at the instrument panel. Now it surprised me that Tamiya don't give you any decals for the instruments. They give you the data plaques here, which is nice, but they don't give you anything for the instruments. So basically they've got moulded on details. So what I've done, I've airbrushed these last night. I did this, so I know it's nice and dry. I've airbrushed these with some satin black paint. So what I'm going to do now is give them a very, very light dry brushing with some white enamel. So I've got some paint on the brush there. Because I hate these tins. I don't know whoever designed them, but when you stir them and the paint goes up into there, and oh, they do my head in, these old humble type tins. So I've got the brush nice and wet, and the reason we use enamel paint for dry brushing is the paint stays wet in the brush. If you did this with acrylic, you just end up with basically dust in the brush. So I've basically removed pretty much all of that. Now I'm just going to test it on a piece of sprue first, and we can see there that when I wipe it off there's quite a lot of paint still on there. So I'm just going to keep going over this sprue in an attempt to get most of this paint off. We can sort of dry brush that Tamiya logo there. Yeah, I think that's about right. Now I'm just going to very, very gently brush over this, but no pressure on at all, going in all different directions as you can see, and very, very slowly we will see the detail in the gauges start to pop out. I don't know if you can see that starting to come through now. As I say, no pressure at all, just keep going over it different directions, and it will pick up. It will pick up the detail that's in those gauges. There we go. And I think that is about that. Now you can see we've got what kind of resembles an instrument panel. And now what we're going to do is put a drop of gloss varnish in there to replicate the glass, let that go off for a few hours, and then we can mask those up, and then we can paint the instrument panel. Okay guys, that's what we're after there. I put some a drop of Tamiya X22 clear in each one, and what you want to do is like really put a lot in there so it sort of almost bulges up, because as you can see here, straight away as soon as it dries it shrinks back. I may even put another coat on, and this is one of the downsides of using clear to replicate your glass. It always kind of gives you that beveled look. Whereas if you look back at my Lancaster instrument panel build, I use the acetate in there and it gives you the dead flat look, which is much, much better. But there you go, you can see the sort of thing we're after. So what I'll do is make some little masks. Once that's dried off, I'll mask them up and then spray the rest of the instrument panel in situ with the rest of the tub. And now the radiator and everything is glued in. You can see I pre-masked the headlights, the blackout lights, and the they're not blackout lights, are they? They're identification lights, I think. And the the radiator, the actual radiator itself, is still masked up as well. So if I need to paint all this with olive drab, I can, and then just pull the masking out afterwards. So that won't be a problem. I've also gone around the little gaiters at the bottom of the gear sticks. They were like a sort of suede they used. If you think about modern vehicles, the sort of vinyls we've got now, the temperature resistant flexible materials and fuel and oil resistant materials, they didn't have all that in those days. So what you'll find on these Jeeps, particularly with the Ford, in a lot of places they use felt, very thick chunks of felt. There's felt pads all around the radiator, there's felt pads all around the edges of the bonnet, there's felt all over the basically the fuel tank is mounted in felt, there's felt pads around the bottom of the pedals, there's felt everywhere. So but for these I think they used suede, which was kind of stitched up, The actual seats themselves were canvas, and there would have been poppers all around here. The actual canvas popped onto a steel frame with like poppers, and the base of the driver's seat lifted out and gave you access to a fuel filler neck. And the early ones had a small one, and the later ones had like a, I don't know, like a 3.5, 4 inch size neck, for easier filling, I think, with a jerry can. So but they used to carry like a funnel in the right hand rear toolbox. There was a funnel and a jack, I think, and in this side was chains and stuff, I'm not sure. But anyway, I mean, I must look up now what those lights are called. It's annoying me, I can't remember what those small lights are. They're not side lights, I think they're marker lights or something. I'll check that out now. Okay, history lesson. Just checked, these are actually blackout lights, and they're also called marker lights, and there's also one on the back here. They've got two here. Yes, of course there are two, one on the side. And basically what they had was, inside them was a slot, and there were V's cut into the internal plastic or whatever, and they would only show if you were at foot level. If you were walking towards the Jeep or driving another Jeep, you could see the light. If you're flying from above, you couldn't see it, because of the way the triangle was shaped. I'm going to have to get mine out and light them up and see what happens. But also on the back ones, there on the lower section, there are 4 kind of Ys cut into them. So if you can see 8 Ys or 8 Vs when you're driving behind this Jeep, you're too close. If you see 4, then you're correct, and if you see 2, you're too far away. So yeah, very, very clever for those days. And then later in the war, they added the blackout light on the actual fender there, which was basically a headlight with like a baseball cap shroud over it. That it's actually in here in the kit. I can show you here. Where is it? There we go. There it is there with the guard over the top, and it's got a light over the top of the light, so it could be seen from above. But what that was done, it was directly in line with the Jeep in front, or the vehicle in front, directly in line with their mirror. So if the driver of this Jeep saw that light fast approaching, he could dab his brakes, make the brake lights flash, and that would give the oncoming vehicle a warning there's someone in front of him. So yeah, there must have been some accidents when they were driving with blackout lights because they couldn't see each other. I also know that a lot of the British military vehicles, they painted the rear diff cover white, and apparently that was for night driving as well. They would have a light on the vehicle behind that would shine, and it would show up on the diff cover if you were too close. So there we go, a little bit of a history lesson. In the meantime, I've gone on, and what I've done with the wheels, I've cut the wheel backs here, these parts, off of the sprue, and glued them on to the wheels while they're still on the sprue. They're a beautiful fit, absolutely gorgeous, typical Tamiya. And now what I'm going to do is paint these. I've done it on the sprue so that I can just paint them on the sprue, which I always do if I can, because it's worth doing. So I'll get these painted up. The dash won't be ready to do yet because that's still going to be wet with the lacquer. You can see there how that, remember I said it's pulled down, it will pull down, sorry, that you can see how it's pulled down basically to just hardly anything. So if you are using Tamiya X22 clear and you do get a bit of a run or a puddle or something, don't worry about it, it will probably pull down and disappear. So there we go, guys. So I'll get some more painting done and I'll come back to you. Alright, moving on here, it's about 20 minutes since the last segment. I've put some more of the X22 in the instrument panel, or in the gauges, to try and make them look more like glass. The last lot just sunk back down, the raised detail was sticking up, so there's a lot in there now, so let's see how that dries off. I've painted the wheels, so they're ready to come off the sprue now, be cleaned up, and I'll show you about painting the tyres by hand. Or we could do the rims and then airbrush them. There's not really much of a rim there to use, you know, like the circle templates or whatever. So I'll show you how I do that with a brush for the beginners amongst us. Got the horn, which goes underneath the bonnet here. It's got a long sort of trumpet on the front of it. I've drilled the end of that out. That was just a solid lump of plastic, so I've drilled the end of that out so it looks a bit more realistic. And glued the jerry can together because that's the only part really I think that comes in two halves. So I've glued that together so that I can take the time to clean up the seam and let it dry off, should I say. As you know, I've glued the wheels together. So what I'm going to do now, I'm not going to build it as they're suggesting. I'm not going to add the chassis at this stage. I'm going to add the chassis at the end. So basically I'll build the whole body up and then I'll plop the chassis on. Wheels will already be on the chassis, and then put that part on and that'll be it done. Well, maybe the windscreen. I won't be doing the driver figure. I can't paint figures for the life of me. I won't be adding this here. I won't be adding that. It's just going to be a sort of standard Jeep with no machine gun or anything. Looking at the front bumper here, just notice that it's got, because on the back it's got quite a complex lot of moulding on it. It's all not flat on the front, and I'm just going to take that off the sprue and give it a bit of a clean up. One other thing you'll notice with Tamiya kits, notice the sprue connection points are on the bottom of the bumper. Like on these parts here, these hip pads, the sprue connection point was on the bottom. Tamiya, the only two people I know that do it are Tamiya and Wingnut Wings. They think carefully where they put the sprue connection points, and where possible they will always put the connection point where it can't be seen. So like on the bottom of the bumper, or on the top of the exhaust where it goes against the body, or you know, like on the seats it'll be underneath and not in a place where it's going to be obvious. So if you don't make a very good job of cleaning it up, then it sews up, you know. They're very, very good like that, and Wingnut Wings are also extremely good at it. I think it's all down to the tool designers are modelers, so they know what to, you know. It's like Wingnut Wings, the kits are designed by, you know, Richard plays a massive part in the kit design, and the other guy, I can't remember his name now, but they design the mold tools to satisfy the modeler. They know what the modeler wants, and they're not going to put great big ejector pin marks where they're in, you know, very visible spaces and stuff like that. Like Tamiya don't often do that either. Where they do have ejector pin marks is like in their Mosquito, 32nd scale Mosquito, there's quite a lot of ejector pin marks, but when you actually build the kit you realise they're hidden underneath other parts. So there we go, that's that bumper cleaned up now. So what I can do now is get this glued onto the chassis. I've painted the back of it already. I'm just going to remove a bit of paint in there, bit of paint in there, remove the paint from the front of the bumper there, and then get our extra thin. That can go in there now, can't it? Don't know where that rubber band came from. Just put a drop of extra thin on there, a drop of extra thin on there, and then just pop the bumper on, and that's it. Just put another drop in there, another drop in there, and then the next time we're doing some olive green or olive drab, we can just put some paint on there. So that's the chassis pretty much finished. Oh, I need to add the pin tool to the rear, wherever that may be. There it is. So again, we'll add this on, and then when I'm airbrushing some olive green, or olive, I keep calling it olive green, olive drab again, then I can come along and paint this at the same time. You see, like on the pin tool, they've put the sprue connection point on the bottom rather than on the top, which is good of them. And I'm just getting rid of the seam line on there. And I think I'll just scrape this bit of paint away in here, because this true colour is real colour paint. It's quite resistant to the glues, believe it or not. It's good stuff. I absolutely love it. I'm not a big fan of a lot of AK products, but their real colour paint, I really do love it. It's really, really good. There we go. So that's the pintle on. And I'm just going to run some extra thin around the outside of that, just to make sure we've got no seam, because I hate mold seams. I think they can make, or they won't make, they'll certainly break a model appearance wise. Okay, so that's that on there. And as you can see, you know, it's been a few minutes now, that X22 in there has pulled back again, so we'll have to keep putting that on until we get it nice and flat, I think. Right, moving along with the model. You can see the light grey patches here. I've glued on the Blackout Light on the front, the bows for the roof, or for the canvas top should I say, the handles on the sides, so they're all drying now, and I've put Mr. Surfacer in them, because basically the Blackout lamp is in the kit. It sits in a recess, and the recess is slightly larger than the part, so it looks like it's sat in a recess, whereas in real life it's actually bolted to the top of the wing. So I want to get rid of that sort of sunk in look. And also then these bows are one piece of like a 1 inch diameter tubing that go around the back and fold up. They pull out of this bracket here and then go into this bracket here. So these would always be scratched at the front, and this would always be scratched here if the roof's been up. These bits on the back that are actually supporting it are actually canvas straps holding it down, so they'll have to be picked out after it's all painted. But I wanted to get rid of the joins, and also the holes in the body were much bigger than the pins that that those straps go into. So you know, I could see the side of the holes around the straps, so I've filled them up with Mr. Surfacer 1000, so I'll let that go off now. I've also done the glazing. I've done the usual thing of going around the inside with a black pen, like a Sharpie, first, and go around the edge of the glazing, so when you look across it you don't get that sort of shiny glistening line when you look across the glazing. And I dropped one. Be careful you don't do the same thing. The two plastic panels actually sit in, and the centre ridge is proud, and when I put this left hand one in here, I actually had it sat up on top of that, so when I did my glue around the edges, it actually went onto the front of the face there. So I popped the glass back out and then polished it. I'm going to have to do the because it's not perfectly clear, and you can still see a remnant of where that glue was. So what I'm going to have to do, I think, is make up a mask and do the sort of just the light dusting over, and then take the mask off so it looks like it's had a light dusting on it, but the windshield wipers have kept that area clear, so just like it's a bit dirty like you see on a real car. So that's that. So that's got to dry, that's got to dry, the instrument panel's got to dry, so I've now got to put this down and do something else, because I'm just waiting for things to dry now. So I'm going to leave this now for a little while. It'll be a little while for me, but a few seconds for you, so I'll see you in a minute. Okay, I've brought you a little bit closer for this bit because I want to show you, this is for beginners. If you're not a beginner, then fast forward because you know all this anyway. Great way to paint tyres without masking or anything. I'm using this colour here, which is called Teerschwarz, which is tar black 06, and it's like an off black. Tyres are never, if you look at tyres, they're not actually black, they're very dark grey. So what you do is you mix this up, and I've made a very, very watery mix. You can see it's extremely thin, and then keep the brush fairly loaded. You don't want it absolutely dripping wet, but don't wipe it all off. And then if you just come along like this and just touch the rim, you will see what happens is the paint will run around, and the more paint you put on, the better it works. There we go, you can see it there running around. Now if you want to make this really, if you can see it there, watch it go round. If you want to make this really effective, if you paint the tyres with gloss first, or paint the whole wheel and tyre assembly with gloss first, it will it will work a lot better. So there you go, that's how to paint tyre rims without having a really steady hand. I'll just show you once more. Brush is pretty loaded. Just touch the paint into the corner of the rim. I'm actually taking too much paint off the brush. You can see there it goes. And you can watch the paint just creep around like that. And because it's Revell paint and it's very thin and it's mixed with water, if you mess up, just get a cotton bud or another paintbrush, soak it in water, just wipe it over, get rid of everything, and then you can start again. And as long as you've left the olive drab long enough to dry and it's a solvent based paint, the water shouldn't affect it. Obviously if you soak it, it will, but and the other beauty is, because this paint is made up with like probably 80% water, don't worry about having it too thick or puddling, because it will just dry back to nothing. And there you go, you see, you can get a perfectly painted wheel and tyre. And I've left these on the sprue. People hate painting on the sprue, some people really go crazy about it. The only reason I've done it is because it's a really good way of holding them. And when I actually, obviously when I come to paint the rest of the tyres, then I shall obviously take them off. And of course the other thing you can do with this, if you want to airbrush your tyres, you can do this and then just stick lumps of blue tack on to roughly mask what you've just painted, and then you can airbrush the rest of the tyre if you want to, which I may well do with Tamiya XF85, I think it is, their newish rubber black, which is a great colour for tyres. You've also got the Mr. Hobby Aqueous, which is another great colour for tyres. There's a it's called Tyre Black, believe it or not. Yeah. So I'll come off camera now and stop waffling. There we go. And I'll just show you, if I just put some on there and leave it, you can watch it go round. I'll join up in a minute. You can see it creeping round, and then boom, there you go, it's joined up. And then you can just fill in behind it. That'll do the same, that'll join up. There you go. And then you can just fill in behind it. And that's the thing, if you try and paint it with like a normal consistency of paint, or even paint which is too thick, you're actually making the brush do all the work. Whereas with this, you're just letting capillary action pull the paint into that joint. Once more. In fact, if I just go around and put some drops of paint, we should see it join up to make a complete circle. There you go. Okay, so go and have a go at that. And there's another little tip for the newer modelers to help you build a perfect model. And there we go, guys. That's after 2 watery coats. You can see they look great, and no real skill in doing that, just a bit of patience and let the paint flow into the gaps and let it capillary around the wheel. So there we are. So I'll let them dry now and then I'll be back. Right, I've painted the tyres now, and I've done them in a with the Mr. Hobby Tyre Black, which is here, which is number 77, and I love this paint for tyres. And all I've done is got some blue tack and just put the blue tack over the wheels like that to cover the actual green part of the wheel roughly, and then sprayed it on. And any blue tack that gets stuck in there, I shouldn't be doing this, this paint's not quite dry yet, but I need to dig the blue tack out of that hole. I should be able to use another piece of blue tack to pull it out, but that doesn't seem to be working. Now I don't want to handle this too much because the paint's not fully dry yet. Come on, there we go. So here you can see there you get the so you get the effect of the other grey is sort of down in the wheel rib and this is on the top, and it all just sort of blends in. And once you've put dust and dirt on the tyres, as you do, then it'll all just disappear anyway. So yeah, got some stuck in there as well. I think I've probably pushed it into the centres with the cocktail sticks. This is the spare, so that's the... Oh dear. Anyway, you get the idea. There we go. Those tyres are done now, and I'll probably give them a matte varnish just to seal them in, and then go from there. Hey guys, right, it's Sunday now, and so this is day 3 of this build for me. I'm going to try and get this one done today and get it up on the channel tonight. So I've done a little bit this morning. The X22 around the instruments, still not dry. It's probably about 1 millimetre thick, to be honest, or 0.5 millimetre thick. So what I've done, I've thinned down some of the AK real colour and brush painted that around the instrument dials there, so I can just roughly mask them loosely with a bit of tape, and then spray around it. I've glued the cowl on, as you can see, very careful, just a couple of drops of cement in there, because there is a seam there that's actually there on the real vehicle. It's not all the way along, it's only sort of across the middle, so if you really want to be fussy, you could fill the ends. In fact, I might even do that with a bit of Mr. Surfacer. Fill the ends. There is a seam. In real life, that part there is about this long, and there's a seam visible for about that much of it. It's obviously welded at the ends or something, and then just painted over. In fact, when you look at these Jeeps, some of the finish, you know, where there are seams and stuff, they are very nice. Almost like a modern car, you know, it all looks blended in and lovely. So there were some ejector pin marks on the inside of the bonnet. I've sanded those off. I don't really know why, I just have. So I'll stick that on a stick now and spray the inside of the bonnet, and then once that's dry I can stick it on another stick and spray the outside of the bonnet. I've painted the bracket on the horn olive green. I'm actually, if anybody's got one of these for sale, I want to buy one of these in real life in full size, so if anybody knows where there's one, I'll happily buy it from them. Done nothing else to the chassis really. Gave the shovel and the pickaxe, or the axe should I say, a coat of matte varnish, and then painted the handle and the ends in Vallejo metallic grey. So that's all drying off now. I've given the tyres a coat of Tamiya matte coat to sort of seal them in, ready for a bit of weathering, wash and dust application, and that sort of blends everything into to be sort of look like one. So they look lovely now. And the seats, I've given them another, they're just drying. I've given as I said, I was going to give them a wash, so they've had a kind of wash of a khaki green colour, and that's sort of given the cushions the correct sort of colour, and then when they get a dry brush in with some tan, they'll really pop. And then obviously the whole thing's going to get a wash of different colours and stuff. So not really much left to do now. I mean, if we take the figure out, I'm not going to be using. Most of that there won't be used either. All we've really got is the windscreen, the jerry can. That's it. I mean, I need to finish off the jerry can, and the mirror and the sides for the glass there. So not really much to do at all now. So I'll just get on and get some painting done, and then I'll come back and show you the results. Right, Sunday now. Sorry, not Sunday, Monday. So lots and lots been done. I painted the main tub, As you can see, that's done in the AK Real Colours Olive Drab. And then gone around and painted in the lights and the blackout light bit there. Bit difficult to really sort of know what colour to do. I looked at my blackout lights and it basically looks black, that lower part. So so I've done that black on the bottom. The red I used Vallejo red because it brushes beautifully, but it looked a bit garish, so I've just gone afterwards with a dab of Tamiya Smoke, which is X19, I think it's X19. Yes. So that's worth remembering, and that sort of gives them, not only gives them a glossy finish, but it also sort of tones down the red and makes it look a bit more scale. So that's the body tub pretty much done. We're sort of ready to pretty much remask and mask that now, and you can see now that with the blackout light on the front where I did that Mr. Surfacer, now it looks like it's actually on top of the wing rather than sitting in a recess like it did before. And you can see the joins in the hoops there have disappeared. I've got to pick out these straps with a canvassy colour. I've also got to fit the spare wheel, which goes on like so, like that. And that'll just sit on that. So you can see it's really starting to take shape now. I'm tempted to not weather it at all. I'm tempted to just give it a wash, a little bit of dust in the tyres. Because it just the paint finish in that is just so lovely. I'd forgotten to do the machine gun, so that's had the wood effect, and then I've gone over it with a gloss varnish because obviously a machine gun would have been far better looked after than a shovel and than an axe. So they're done, just waiting for those to dry. Although what I'm waiting for here is this mirror. I put some clear over the silver paint in the mirror, waiting for that to dry. Actually need to keep the body vertical because I don't want the lacquer to run down. The jerry can is made up, seam is gone, all sanded down and painted. So that's all nice. Put the handle on the top. Shame there's no cap detail, but it is what it is. Steering wheel's done, ready to go on. I think what I'll do is give this a bit of a glazed finish. What actually happened with these, obviously in use, they got a bit shiny. So what you can do is if you just get some skin grease on your finger and just rub it onto there, like so, it'll kind of give it a glossy sort of ish finish. So so that's done there. Windscreen obviously all masked up and painted. Put the stays on the side. Purposely got those out so they're not all symmetrical and perfect, because they wouldn't be symmetrical and perfect. Sorry about that, guys. Dog was barking at something rather. So yeah, the windscreen's there with the stays on, and they're not all symmetrical and perfect, as I say. I'll have to unmask the clear and pick out those wiper blades in black, so they'll look better. Well, the rubbers anyway, they'll look better. Can't remember if I showed you the seats or not. I've done those with like a greeny brown wash over the top of them to give them that sort of mottled canvassy look with the light brown underneath. And that is pretty much it. I've sprayed the hood, so I painted the inside, then put the blue tack on, painted the outside. So may as well leave that on there actually for doing the decals, because I'm going to gloss coat that now and do the decals, which will be next. So I need to start looking at getting some gloss coat in places and where we're going to put our decals. So I'll get that done and I'll be back. Okay, so I'm doing version 1. So all I'm going to do is just gloss. I've got some Tamiya X22 in here with AK Real Colours High Compatibility Thinner, and it's probably 60% thinner, 40% lacquer. And all I'm going to do is put gloss where I need to apply my decals, because this is very matte paint and I don't trust the decals to go down on this without any silvering. And I don't want to try it because I don't want to try it. So I can see we've got a star there and a tyre pressure badge there and a tyre pressure badge on the fender. So what I need to do is just, this is about 20 psi, and all I'm going to do is lightly apply some there. You can see it going on, and then just here I'll put some there where it's going to be tyre decals going on, a little bit here for that decal there, and then going around the back of the tub. There's nothing on the tub, so I'll do the same on the other side. Put some there, some there, and some there. As I think I mentioned before, don't worry too much about build up. This stuff pulls back mega. So you can see I've got a bit of, I don't know if you can catch it in the light, I've got a bit of a build up on there on the edge of the wheel arch. That will pull down flat in no time. Let's just get some more on there and that should do us then. There we go. So that's those bits done. Let's just stand the body there. Now the front bumper and the rear bumperettes need to be done. And like I say, don't be scared of putting it on heavy because you want a nice gloss coat for the decal to go down on, and it will pull back. And then after it's had a matte coat on it, the decals will look painted on, hopefully. Nothing on the windscreen. That's it now. There are placards on the dashboard, so I need to paint that area there with gloss. I mean, I could gloss coat the whole thing, but then I'd have to go around and mask up everything again when I do a matte coat. So, you know, it's worth just trying to keep this localized if you can. I think that should be good enough. I'll be using microset anyway, microsol. And one more thing on the little the little fire extinguisher here, that's got a decal on it, so I need to just give that a gloss coat all over. There we go, that can stay like that. Tip that over, come on. That it will not sit on its back. It's got a flat on its back and it won't sit on it. There we go. Oh, and the hood. We may as well paint the whole hood because we've got the ID numbers going on the side. And then we've got the star on the top, so I believe. Well, if it hasn't, I'm going to put a star on it anyway because I like the way it looks. There we go, that's that done. Just check this body once more. Yep, I think that's good enough. Just a dab more on there, touch more on there, touch more there, touch more there, and a touch more there. A little bit more on that glove box. And then the front bumper, rear bumperettes. The hood should be fine like that. And that should do us, guys. That's got us sealed in, ready for putting the decals on. Okay, so getting close to the end now. It's decal time. So I'm going to put some on live for you. I'll just do a couple. And then I'll do the rest off camera. After all, this isn't a kind of how-to or a beginner's guide or anything. If you want to see that, look at my Airfix Monty's Umber or the new Junkers JU88A4, which is a build along. Those two videos are out there, a few videos are out there, and yeah, the Umber's almost finished, the Junkers has only just been started. So I'll do these two here, which are the decals for the rear bumperettes. I'm doing version A, so yeah, these are just those two decals there. I've done the instrument, instrument panel. I've done the oops. I've done the data plaques on the instrument panel there, or on the glove box lid. These being Tamiya decals and being old, they're playing up. They're very thick. They're very hard. They don't want to conform. I'm using micro set and micro sole. You can see there I've got in my little foam base. Just take a piece of foam, cut two 1/8 circles in it, and away you go. So yeah, I've now got some pretty warm water rather than the stuff I was using. But I think you'll see. I mean, they take forever to slide. I mean, if these were Bronco decals, they'd be practically sliding as soon as you take them out of the water, but or tack them. But these things just don't seem to want to move. So leave that in for a minute, and I'll come back to you. Okay, so literally like 3 minutes later, they've actually decided they're going to move. So what I'll do, I'll just get this in my tweezers here, which was pointless because, well, it wasn't actually, because it sticks to the tweezers. And then I'll take a drop of micro set, and that one goes on the right hand side. So I'll put a drop on the left as well. And then just picking this up in the tweezers, then I should be able to just slide this off like that. And give it a little nudge to position it. Doesn't need to be perfect. I mean, these things were sprayed on, I'm guessing, once they took delivery and the Jeep was accepted. I suppose that's when they were. And then put another drop on the top. A lot of people don't do this, but if you look on the instructions for microset, it actually tells you to put some down, put the decal down, absorb the excess, and then put another drop on top. So that's what I'm doing. And it was Paul from ISM that raised that one. He's done a video on how to do decaling, and he was using this. Of course, now he's got his own UMP decaling solution, so probably won't be promoting the microset anymore. But apparently his stuff does everything. Now, I know that certainly like Bandai decals are a complete nightmare to work with. Hobby Boss are awful, with my experience anyway. But at the end of the day, if you've got Bandai decals like on a Starfighter or something on the instrument panels, if you put them down, get them in the right place, and then put a drop of Mr. Colour leveling thinners on top of them, then they'll move. They'll go down lovely, but don't touch them. It's pretty true with any of these setting solutions. Once the decal's down, you shouldn't touch it. Okay, and you can see, I don't know if you can pick that up on the camera there, but you should be able to see that film overhanging on the bottom edge. I'll leave that like that. It might curl over, probably won't, but once it's dry I'll be able to trim that off. And I'll be giving this a matte coat anyway, just to seal them in, get rid of that edge. But actually I'm going to pull it down a touch more. There we go. So I'm happy with that. And then I'm just going to put a drop of micro sole on the top of that. And that should help that edge go down. There you go. I mean, these are really, really hardy decals. You can see me here putting the microset on, applying the decal, moving it all around and pulling it all about, and that. if this was like men decals or whatever, if you try doing this, they'd fall apart. So be careful. I mean, Cartograph are probably the best decals out there, and if you try pulling them about like this once they're down, you've got no chance. So there we go, that's those couple done. I'll go on and get some more done, and then I'll come back and we'll get it all put together. Okay, so that's the decals finally done. Absolute nightmare. This one broke up. The big star, you can just see in there the crack across the bottom. I might touch that in, or I guess once it's had a wash it'll probably not be noticeable anyway. What I might do is strip this at a later date and put some other decals on. So yeah, that was a bit of a nightmare. They are very thick, as you can see the edges, so they're going to have another gloss coat now to try and sort of seal them in, and then put a matte coat over them so that the carrier film kind of disappears. The rifle there is all painted up with the green there on the holder, and we've got the gunmetal on the end and on the trigger. The decals on the fire extinguisher there, so I've got that one. Shovel, I've put some more grayer paint on it to sort of dull it down a bit and then give it a quick polish up my fingers. Same on the axe. Wheels and tires, you can see there I've done nothing to them. These have had a dry brush with some Humbrol tan colour and then a wash with some brown. They may get another dry brush, I don't know, we'll see, with a sort of very light greenish colour perhaps. And I've put a brown wash over this this under seat pack as well. So yeah, all in all, it's looking quite nice. One of the TP25, the tyre pressure things, just disappeared. I don't know where it went. I had 4 pieces on the decal sheet. Is that it there? No, that's not it. But yeah, I had 4 decals on the you know, 4. I cut them into two lots of 2, and then let them soak. And then when I went to get them up, there was 3 there. So one's missing. So this one got forgotten. So yeah, all in all, coming together very nicely. I'm just going to put some more gloss on these now, just to sort of try and get rid of some of that edge, and then I'll give it all a matte coat, and we'll go from there. I'll come back then. Okay then guys, bit of a change of angle here. You can see we're nearly there. Windscreen's on, so that's that. The bonnet is just placed on, and you can see here what I did. I actually rubbed the decals down, sanded them down to get rid of the edges before I put a matte varnish on there, and then all the edges kind of disappear. And you can see I went a bit hard there and rubbed away the bottom of the A, but doesn't matter. It's a military vehicle. It's a technique you can use. You can use a very fine sanding stick or a sanding sponge and just rub away, and the carrier film will basically blend into the lacquer that you put on top of it. So you end up with no carrier film then when you put a matte varnish on. The body is just placed onto the chassis. As you can see, I've done the same on the back here. I rubbed away at the decals. I've glued on the wheels and everything. I've now got to put a tiny drop of gloss coat in the there's the assembly that goes on the top. Yeah, I've rubbed away the decals, and I've now got to put a drop of gloss coat in the reflectors and that there. In fact, I might use a semi-gloss, just so they're not so garish. And then once I've totally finished, I know everything's done, I can remove the masking from the headlights and the windscreen there. The wheels are just placed on. You can see I've put a little bit of wash into the tread on the tyres there, nothing really much at all. I think what I'll do is now give the whole thing a wash of Starship Filth, and then another coat of matte varnish over that probably, and then pick out those clear bits. So let me get some more done, and then I'll come back. But as you can see, we're very close to the end now. And there she is, guys, all done. I'll start by saying sorry about the lighting, not fantastic. As I've promised in all my videos, as soon as I start advertising and start making some money out of these videos, the money will go straight back in. And the first thing I'm going to do is buy some decent lighting. I still haven't received a payment yet. I don't know if you know how YouTube works, but basically you earn money from advertising. They give you a percentage of the money that you earn. I think it's about 68% or something. and then once you reach a certain level, which I know in the US is $100, I think in the UK it's £60, and then once you reach that threshold, then they pay you. So if you made £59 in a month, they wouldn't pay you until the second month, when they'd pay you £118 if that's the way it worked, if you got £59 again. So yeah, so basically I still haven't received a payment. Once I do, the first thing I'm going to do is get on Amazon and buy myself a decent light, so that these videos will be a lot better. So yeah, as it is, not great, but I'll try and get some nice photos to put up with this video at the end, just with a bit of music or something. So there we go, there she is. The tools are on the side with all the wood grain, and the steel is probably a little bright. I probably need to tone that down, but it does add a little bit of interest to what would otherwise just be a dull olive green model, olive drab model. I mean, these Jeeps, I believe they were built and then just painted with olive drab. You know, literally everything, all the nuts, bolts, everything was painted over. So you know, you're potentially looking at quite a boring model unless you beat the hell out of it and weather it, which I didn't want to do. This is depicted, this is summer 1944 in Normandy, and I've depicted this as, like, you know, sort of day one of its life in service, so it's hardly been used at all. It's got a bit of rust on the exhaust because exhaust rusted very fast in those days. Everything rusted very fast in those days. There were no sort of protective coatings or anything. The paint was very dull, very matte, which is what I've depicted here. I will probably give this another coat of matte varnish, but as it's only just had a wash on it of Abtelung 501 Starship Filth, it's a very, very fine wash. You can see, I'll show you here. This is the Tamiya bottle. Blimey. This is the Tamiya bottle. I've mixed it in. You can see in there it's extremely thin. Just brush it all over, let it go off, and that's that. So there we go. The windscreen still folds down, as you can see, and we got the machine gun on there, and well, the rifle and everything on the back there. The hood's removable, and you can see the engine inside. So there we go, there's the engine. I can pick it up and show you that there. So that's all quite dull in there as well. I've added a little bit of interest by giving it some of the black parts a semi-gloss finish, because some of them were actually painted gloss black, some of the engine fittings, and they were in fact the only real colour on the whole thing. So there we go, all done. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've enjoyed making it. It's taken me a lot longer than I thought it would. Oh, by the way, I went over with like a grey wash on the jerry can just to try and give it a bit of a different colour. Like I say, try and add some interest to what would otherwise just be a lump of olive drab plastic. But yeah, overall, really, really happy. Lovely little kit. I'll put a list of materials I've used in the description down below, so that if you want to have a go at this model and sort of replicate what I've done, then you can. It is a very, very good beginner's kit because it doesn't need a lot of paint. You don't need a lot of special skills or experience to get a really nice job out of it. And I see no reason why anybody with a bit of patience and a bit of time couldn't get a result, you know, like this. I'm no expert. This is far from perfect, but you know, no model is perfect, to be honest. But I like it, and I'm happy with the way it's come out. I think I might have a go at the Bronco Gpw now, which is probably sort of 3, 4, maybe even 5 times the parts count of this one. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll get some photographs up now for you to look at, and I'll see you all soon. I look forward to the next build with you guys. Bye bye for now.